Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're getting into some really powerful frameworks for successful innovation, and we're pulling these ideas from the PDMA Toolbook 2 for new product development.
All right, let's start with a puzzle that every single organization faces. Just look at this contrast. Early in a project, you have a huge ability to influence change, and you've risked very little money or time. But late in a project, it's the exact opposite. Your ability to change things is tiny, but your resources at risk are massive. So why is it that we tend to focus our attention over on the right when it's already too late? Yeah, this question gets to the heart of what's called the innovation paradox. And if you can understand this, you are on your way to building a culture that can actually create new, amazing things. So let's dive into why this happens. The source material actually has a perfect name for this, the ironic inverse. Think about it. Senior management's attention is at its lowest right at the start of a project, but that's precisely the moment when their guidance and strategic input are the most valuable and can be implemented with the least amount of disruption.
And we've all seen this play out, right? The more money and time get poured into a project, the more eyeballs are on it. But by that point, the train has pretty much left the station. Pivoting becomes incredibly difficult, and great ideas often get shut down, not because they were bad ideas, but because they were looked at way too late in the game.
So what's the fix here? Well, the most important takeaway is this. Leaders cannot just delegate innovation and then pop in at the very end to see how it's going. You have to be involved from the start, laying the foundation for ideas to actually survive and thrive.
And the book outlines 3 really practical actions for leadership. First, you form a dedicated steering committee. This sends a huge signal that innovation isn't just a buzzword, it's a priority. Second, you stay involved through regular meetings, not to micromanage, but to guide and support. And third, and this one is the real game changer, you set clear go, no-go criteria before anyone even starts brainstorming.
When you set those rules of the game up front, you take the politics and gut feelings out of the equation. You replace them with a process that people can actually trust. It creates a culture where your team feels empowered, knowing that their hard work will be judged fairly. That trust is absolutely essential.
Okay, so let's say you've set that internal foundation. The system is ready. Now, where do the great ideas come from? Well, they come from listening to your customer. But it's not as simple as it sounds.
There's a whole framework for this called the voice of the customer, or VOC. It's all about systematically understanding what your customers truly need. But there's a huge critical warning that comes with this process, a paradox you have to understand.
And here it is. This is the core dilemma. If you ask customers what they want, they're almost always going to describe a better version of something that already exists. You know the old saying, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. They are experts in their problems, not in your solutions.
This example just nails the difference. Nobody would have ever asked for a microwave oven. It just wasn't in their vocabulary. But they absolutely could have described the need. I wish I had an oven that cooked food fast and didn't turn my kitchen into a sauna. Your job isn't to ask for solutions, it's to dig deep and uncover those needs.
So how in the world do you get people to articulate those deep, unmet needs? Well, the trick is to shift them into what the book calls wish mode. You have to get them to stop thinking about what exists today and start dreaming about what could exist tomorrow.
And there's a really powerful technique for this called customer idealized design. You basically ask people to imagine that the old way of doing things was just gone, wiped out, and you ask them to design their perfect solution from a totally clean slate. The results can be absolutely revolutionary, as a little company called IKEA found out.
So when IKEA did this, when they asked shoppers to design their ideal store, people didn't talk about shelves or products. They talked about feelings. They wished for a store where they felt oriented, where they felt relaxed, where things were efficient. You know, all the things that are usually missing from a giant retail store.
And those wishes, those feelings, directly led to a radical new store design, this octagon shape with a big open airy center. You can see it right here. On the left is a drawing inspired by what customers wished for, and on the right is the actual Chicago store they built. They turned those abstract wishes into a concrete architectural reality.
And the result? A mind-blowing 93% of shoppers said they would definitely or probably shop there again. That number is just proof positive that listening to wishes pays off in a huge way.
But, you know, coming up with that breakthrough idea is really only half the battle. Because new ideas are fragile. They're not perfect yet. So how do you protect them inside an organization that's really built for efficiency and predictability, not for wild new concepts?
Yeah, new ideas are almost always messy, which makes them really easy for people to dismiss. So the book gives us a tool to give these fragile ideas a fighting chance, to kind of nurture them before they're strong enough to defend themselves.
It's called the SWIFT framework, and it's specifically designed to help you nurture an idea instead of just judging it and shutting it down prematurely. It forces you to look at an idea from every angle, but in a very specific, very constructive order. The process itself is pretty simple, but it is so powerful, and the order is everything. You start with the positive, its strengths, then you identify the weaknesses. But, and here's the key part, before you fix anything, you pinpoint its individuality. What's the unique spark that makes it different? Only then do you try to fix the weaknesses and transform the idea.
And honestly, that sequence is absolutely critical. Because if you jump right to fixing the weaknesses, you risk sanding off all the interesting, novel edges of the idea. You might just smooth it away into another boring Me Too product. By identifying its unique core first, you protect the very thing that makes it special.
So, from understanding the innovation paradox all the way to protecting your wildest ideas, these frameworks really provide a roadmap. They help turn innovation from some kind of mystical art into a disciplined practice. Which leaves me with one final question for you. What's a wild idea in your world that deserves this kind of fighting chance?